The upcoming 2026 midterms could be a bloodbath for Republicans? How? Consider this. On Election Day 2008, Barack Obama received 69 million votes. In his second term, he racked up 65 million votes, and he was considered the Democrat rock star president. Then Hillary ran against Donald Trump. She received the same 65 million votes. But come 2020, Joe Biden supposedly received 81 million votes. Was he really more popular than Obama or Hillary? Of course not. But that is not the half of it. In the 2024 election, Kamala Harris received 68 million votes. But did you know that now it's almost 2 years after that election, and somehow Kamala Harris has been elevated to over 75 million votes? How does a candidate get 8 million more votes after the election? Is this an attempt to validate the fraudulent 81 million vote fantasy from 2020? You bet. One thing stands between chaos and correcting history, and that is the historic 2020 full forensic archive of Maricopa County, Arizona. The single most detailed full audit of a presidential election in American history, audited over 2 million ballots, generated over 20,895,000 individual proof files. This took 58 billion forensic measurements, resulting in over 2 trillion individual base computations. This evidence must be kept for any and all future court cases, Supreme Court cases, and preserved for all time, eventually at the Trump Presidential Library. That is why we need you. You, the people, made this history happen, and now you, the people, can have a hand in making sure this evidence is saved for future generations. Please donate. Please help us. Donate now to continue to preserve in a chain of custody state of the only legal court-ready evidence of the 2020 election disaster, the 2.1 million physical ballots, the single largest forensic audit of a presidential election in American history. Please donate now and preserve history.
Rennie Good was a gifted soul, a writer and a poet and a mother, wow. She tried to hit an agent with her car, oh no! Pop, motherfucker, now she's gone! Yeah, yeah, yeah! Being a fucking liberal is a mental disease. Blue-haired and fuckables with the septum ring. You are not a hero, you're a fucking disease! You fuck around and find out it's what it is! Jeffrey Pretty was a Jewish homo. Started talking shit to protect a chomo. He was getting nicked when he pulled a gun. Bam, motherfucker, now you're gone. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Being a fucking liberal is a mental disease. Blue-haired and fuckables with the septum ring. You are not a hero, you're a fucking disease. Fuck around and find out what that is.
Hey guys, today's T-Day. Not D-Day, T-Day. Tina Peters is to be released from prison today. So what we're going to do to kind of honor that is we're just going to kind of go back over the general details, which can get lost for all of these years since this has been going on of, well, what did the state prosecute Tina Peters for? What happened? What was up? What did they not die? What did they allow? That's what we're going to cover today. So you're going to want to share this program. By the way, today's program is brought to you by the fine folks at Goldco. It's a very simple request I'm asking of you. Just go to jovanlovesgold.com, fill out the form, and get your free gold and silver kit today, because now's the time to protect your money with gold and silver. Folks, I always tell you, if you do not know how the system does it to you, you cannot protect yourself against it. Everything is about information and knowledge, not theory, not polls, not, well, I think, or ideas. It's just about facts. And what do you do with those facts? And do you have the knowledge of how to apply those facts? Please go to jovanlovesgold.com. This is why I do this with the fine folks at Goldco. Please, 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 please. And just get your brain fed. Get your brain fed. It's that simple. Okay. You might want to have a pen and paper. I'll give you a little protracted break here before we get started. You might want to have a pen and paper to make sure you take down some of these facts. They're going to become relevant, because you can bet with Tina coming out, everybody and their brother is going to be saying, Tina, come on my program, validate me, et cetera, et cetera. And you're going to find a lot of people are going to be Tina's buddies. I would think Tina just wants to be left alone a little bit, have some good food, and allowed to detox before everybody begins to clobber her. Just my thoughts. I also want to remind you, at 2 p.m. Central Time, 3 Eastern Time today, with this original broadcast, we will have another special broadcast. It's about data centers, which are a big deal. Everybody's worried about data centers. Here's some info. It's 2 p.m. Central Standard Time today with this broadcast.
Warning. Whoever controls the AI data centers controls the electricity, the water, the internet, and the digital economy. This comes from Lindell TV personality, Mike Dillon. He's blowing the whistle on AI data centers. Monday, June 1st, live on Cut the Crap Show, join host Jovan Hutton Pulitzer while he hosts Mike Dillon with tough answers and questions about, as Mike puts it, the United States is building a digital empire, and nobody asked you. The AI revolution is just to control your life. Mike says, this isn't about innovation, it's about control, and promises to expose how Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Klaus Schwab, Benjamin Netanyahu, and Donald Trump all conspiring together for the benefit of the billionaire class. Dillon claims, your vote wasn't asked for. Your input wasn't wanted. Your concerns weren't considered. Why? Because this is the billionaire class's dream scenario. That's Monday, June 1st, on The Cut, the crap show found at rumble.com/Jovan Hutton Pulitzer. See you there.
Okay, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, 3 Eastern. Okay, so I'm going to give you about 4 minutes, and we're going to talk about Tina Peters. We're just going to go back in time, hit some bullet points, some things you may know, some things you probably didn't know. We're going to get started right after this.
Did you know there really is a 1,000-plus-year-old abundance and food security secret, which has been kept from modern mankind? Now that secret is published and out in the open, all thanks to the amazing best-selling book, Ancient Secret for Growing Giant Fruit in Small Spaces. Is there really a secret method for growing giant fruit? The answer is yes. But what is even more exciting is this secret method was specifically designed for small spaces. From big yards and land plots to apartment patios and decks, you can grow giant fruit in exceptionally small places, like a garage wall, patio wall, or even your backyard fence. This secret method is truly ancient knowledge, which was exclusively practiced by kings, queens, and the ruling class within their grand palaces, castles, and estates. But thanks to this simple, easy-to-understand and follow book, those ancient secrets are being revealed to everyone who wants to grow their own food and achieve real food security. Think about that. At one time, the secrets and techniques in this book were only reserved for the estates, castles, and lands of rulers and royalty. And now you can do the same thing for your own home. Remember, your home is your castle, and the only ruler you are accountable to is yourself. So why not fashion your home gardens into those which are fit for a king? There is even more than you could ever imagine inside the chapters of this groundbreaking book. Secrets like how to trick fruit trees, which normally take 3 to 5 years to bear fruit, in producing fruit in a matter of months. Or how to use this ancient method to train your fruit trees to not only produce more abundance of nutritious and luscious fruit, but get those fruits to be 25%, 50%, even up to 100% larger than regular grocery store produce. This book is an exciting journey back in time, weaving in and out of various periods in history, filled with fascinating people and the stunningly beautiful lost art of Jovan Hutton Pulitzer's bestseller, How to Grow Giant Fruit in Small Spaces. Get your colorful hardbound or soft copy of this amazing bestseller from Amazon. Learn this lost art, achieve true food security, and then pass this along to your children and grandchildren. Don't wait.
Warning. The following program has been rated Dilligaff and is intended for open-minded audiences. If the truth offends you, or if you are allergic to focused intensity, intellectual athleticism, or the occasional F-bomb or even irreverent humor, please switch off now. If your delicate sensibilities need to be worried about or addressed, might we recommend the Underwater Basket Weaving channel to you? Otherwise, sit back, enjoy the wisdom, insight, and wicked sense of humor.
Cut the crap. How many times a day do you want to say that to politicians, the elite, the loony liberals, the fake news media, and the gender-confused emotional socialist snowflake crowd? Cut the crap is your secret weapon for fighting for our freedoms and our great republic. It all begins with a massive mental enema, freeing you from the toxic news and politically correct views, which constipate your consciousness with stinking thinking. Your host, Jovan Hutton Pulitzer. He's known for calling out politicians and telling them to cut the crap. You've seen him on virtually every television network and listened to him on Coast to Coast Radio. And now he's here to help you learn to fight for America. Culture, race, and American politics. They all have one thing in common. They all need to cut the crap. Now, here's your host, Jovan Hutton Pulitzer.
Okay, guys, today is Tina Peters' Day. She's going to be released from prison. I'm going to ask you a few questions. I want you to answer it as best as you can because it, kind of helps me understand kind of where your head is. What did the state of Colorado, answer in chat, what did the state of Colorado prosecute Tina Peters for? What did the state of Colorado prosecute Tina Peters for? And yes, make sure you tune in to and hold off on the guessing. Make sure you tune in to the data center stuff. You're going to learn a lot of important information that you need to know about data centers. That's why I'm even doing a special program. Been talking about doing one for a while, and it just so happened a publicist reached out to me and says, "Hey, we got this guy from Lindell TV who's talking about data centers and stuff. I know it's a topic near and dear to you. Do you want to have him on?" So I went ahead and booked him. We're going to have a very hardcore, serious, truthful, very revealing discussion about data centers. Okay, what did Colorado prosecute Tina Peters for? Do you know? What did she get prosecuted for? Wes Cree says for doing her job to ensure integrity of the elections. Wrong. Now, I asked that for a specific question because I know people are going to answer that way. That is not what the state prosecuted Tina Peters for. That's the dialogue. That's what you've been told. That is the after the fact issue that you were told, that they prosecuted her for doing her job. Now, I want you to, if you were to actually take the time to understand this, you'll understand why we lose these election challenges in court. You'll understand it if you'll pay attention now. Let's just use 2020 as a demarcation line. How many times did, and answer in chat, how many times did Tina Peters have to file reports with her state claiming, look, something's wrong with our elections and I need your help? How many times did, or how many different reports, I guess I should say, right? How many different reports did Tina file saying, my elections are broken, we've got a problem with our elections in our county, help me out? How many times? Put it in chat. You're right. 0. She never did. Not at all. Now, the reason I share this with you, and I'm entitled to my opinion, Tina Peters was intentionally targeted and set up. I'm going to say it again. Tina Peters was intentionally targeted and set up by the right, not the left. By the right, not the left. So the first thing you need to understand about Tina Peters is prior to 2021, she had no problems with her elections. Now, I'm telling you this because there's going to be a lot of dialogue about this. Everybody that ever hung on to Tina Peters or any of this other stuff, they're going to scramble and try to get Tina on to try to make them look like they're incredible election integrity experts. And they're dropping her name as fast as possible. Actually, I found one yesterday. You know, Colorado just had their GOP chairmanship election. And they had to do 2 rounds because nobody got 50%. And Joel Altman, Mr. Election Integrity, helping Tina's, came in dead last. And his pitch was, if you elect me, I'm going to make Tina Peters head of elections. So a lot of people, I believe, are riding on her name. I believe you deserve factual transparency because here's the deal. We're not winning these cases. I don't care whose name you put in. We're not winning these cases. So I want to kind of go back over the facts. Here is what, write this down. Here is what, okay, the state prosecuted Tina Peters for. Number 1, the crimes they charged her with: allowing unauthorized access to the election systems. Second thing, criminal impersonation. We'll talk about that in a minute. Criminal impersonation. The third thing they charged her on was deception and attempting to influence public servants, official misconduct, and violating election security rules. Not laws, rules. Those are the 5 things that Tina Peters was basically charged with. Okay? That was it. What was Tina Peters' defense? Put it in chat. So the defense attorneys attorneys. Okay, if you got to hold on. I don't need any prompting. I got it. I'm going to give you all this information. Trust me, right? What was Tina Peters' defense strategy? What strategy did her attorneys put on for Tina Peters? Sorry, I had to look at my massive forehead there. I want to change glasses. Frankly, because I've come to a point that some of my glasses are just so scratchy I can't see anymore. Okay, so what was Tina Peters' defense strategy? I told you what the state charged her on. The state basically charged her for unauthorized access into the election systems, criminal impersonation, deception, attempts to influence public servants, official misconduct, and violating election security rules. What was Tina Peters' defense? The defense counsel put on the following defense. Here you go. Ready? The defense was the 2020 election was stolen. Are you waiting for more? There's nothing else. The entire defense strategy was the 2020 election was stolen. And there was one main claim in it, and the main claim in it was a Dominion employee came forward. A Dominion voting systems employee came forward and blew the whistle that Dominion was rigging, or whatever word you want to use in there. I'm paraphrasing. Now, let me ask you a question. Is there any congruent nature between what she was charged with and what her defense was? If she was charged with X, why didn't they defend X? Why was it was only about the 2020 election was rigged? So now you understand my point. When I look at this, I don't have to be happy about it, but I'm also not going to cover for people that were just the attorneys, the bullshit that went on. The trial was used to try to prove Dominion had rigged voting machines, PCAPs prove it, all this other stuff, right? That was the entire defense. For me personally, that defense does not and did not in court address what the issues were. I'll give you an example. One of the main issues that Tina got prosecuted for was the leaking of the election passwords, the secure passwords, the passwords into the election system, the leaking of the passwords. Pop quiz. Who leaked the passwords? Just a question. I want to see how up to speed you are on who leaked the passwords. Do you know? We're not talking about the governor. We're talking about who leaked the passwords. Who leaked the passwords that Tina was sent to prison for? It's amazing how many people can't stand on topic. I'm going to give you an example. All of you are saying, Jenna Griswold, Jenna Griswold, Jenna Griswold. That's 2 years later. This is a prime example of how we'll never get any justice. We will never get any justice. We will never fix a single one of these election things because we, as a collective group, can't even focus. I know you want to, Griswold, blame Griswold. No, folks, this would be like you're sitting in a court box. I'm not asking for your opinion. I'm asking for the facts, right? And people want to keep on talking about the Secretary of State. Here's the deal. You need to slow down if we're going to win this. You need to slow down if we're going to fight this. Now, there was a 3-step leak process that leaked the passwords. The first leak of the passwords was Code Monkey, Ron Watkins. Now, is Ron Watkins Tina Peters? Yes or no? Put it in chat. We got to go through this process. You got to get your mind into this process so you understand it. Is Code Monkey Tina Peters? No. But it appeared online via Code Monkey second. Who else was involved in the password leak? There's 2 more people involved. Now, Tina Peters went to prison for it. Tina Peters was indicted for it, found guilty for it, and sent to prison for it. The first person was this fellow Conan Hayes, the dolphin speaker, whatever, high-tech surfer, don't know, protected by the CIA, can't testify. The first person who leaked the password on the machines was him. But how did it occur? Trust me, this is going to get very interesting. And that's why I'm taking you to this drill now. Tina's going to be free. How did it occur? Ready for this? The person going into the servers with somebody else's badge, which is criminal impersonation. It's just a fact. With someone else's badge under somebody else's name was this fellow Conan Hayes. But how did the password get leaked? During the incursion, he was FaceTiming with Patrick Byrne, and Patrick Byrne released the FaceTime. As now all the depositions come in and now all the dates come in and everything else, and you can look at the dates, you find a really interesting triggering event, which I can't explain. Literally, the way it really happened is, and this is, by the way, brand new to me, right? As we get the transcripts, we get everything, we look at it. Evidently, where they charged her with criminal impersonation, it wasn't Tina. It was this fellow Conan Hayes, that gets inserted in it. And Conan Hayes, I couldn't believe it when I had to cross-verify it, and I'll read it to you in a moment. Conan Hayes was FaceTiming this whole thing with Patrick Byrne. And Patrick Byrne released it and it got to Code Monkey. And what Code Monkey didn't do is Code Monkey didn't scrub it. And so the state saw this go out over the internet. The state did. The state goes, wait a second. They saw this go out over the internet. And that is the single event that triggered the search warrant for Tina Peters' office and eventually the warrant for her arrest. Some of you are saying, I saw the video of a guy talking to Patrick Byrne. It was on his locals channel. You're right. I didn't see it because I didn't watch anybody else's stuff. So that was kind of like news to me. Holy smokes. So is it the word cascade or cavalcade of events? The timeline of the leak that started every bit of this was in May of 2021. Tina allowed access to the Mesa County server room and stuff in May. During that time, this fellow that Patrick Burns introduced, Conan Hayes, for some reason, I don't get it, was FaceTiming. Hey, look, I'm in the server. Hey, we just stormed the Capitol. That kind of stuff. And then somehow that got Patrick, or people were watching it, got to Code Monkey, people clipped it, and August 21st, early August of 2021, this video somehow hits Telegram, and then the Gateway Pundit amplifies it. And from that amplification of that singular event, it gave the state of Colorado and the prosecutors the legal authority to say, wait a minute, we've been hacked. This has been done. Here it is. You can see the passwords because it wasn't scrubbed. You could see it on the screen. So the actual state people just back followed what they saw on the screen, and they could tell it was Mesa County. And that's when they issued the raid and search warrant for Tina Peters' homes and office. Isn't that wild? I actually had no idea. I had no idea. But now that you can see all the transcripts and everything final there, I'm going like, whoa, that's freaking nuts. No wonder this got accelerated so fast, because it was actually put out there in the public. But here's the kicker. When it first got put out to the public, it got put out under the premise, get ready for this, because I didn't even know this either. It got put out under the premise that a Dominion employee came forward and provided evidence that Dominion Voting Systems was doing nefarious things with the machines. So it actually came out that it was a Dominion whistleblower. Part of the reason that a lot of this evidence got mucked up in the court, and of course, this is always quarterbacking after the game, right? Was because it was released and because it was actually a lie that it was a Dominion whistleblower coming forward. Think about how many times we've been told that it was a Dominion whistleblower coming forward. It was never a Dominion whistleblower. It had nothing to do with Dominion, but yet it was released as breaking news. Dominion whistleblower comes forward. Question in chat. Does that shock you as much as it shocked me to hear that? Does that shock you? I didn't know that. I did not know that until 2 hours prior to this broadcast. I had no idea. Why would anyone try to promote that it was a Dominion whistleblower when in fact it was never and not a Dominion whistleblower? That's not true. Was it to deflect that it was people in there getting it? Or why not just say it was a part of an investigation? Here's what we discovered. Why did it get put out? It's a Dominion whistleblower coming forward. Think about how many times we've heard that in this process. How many times have we heard that in this process? Why would Code Monkey or Ron Watkins or Patrick and any of the guys claim it was a Dominion whistleblower coming forth when it was easily discoverable? How this got discovered, I guess, was in testimony and etc. Right? How is that? How does that work? Right? The dates on this, so you understand the dates, and we're going to kind of be working a little bit back in time. Evidently, sometime between August 3rd and August 10 of 2021, Watkins posted on his Telegram videos that were taken inside Mesa County's election office in May 2021 during this trusted build. Now, what happened is that video showed the BIOS passwords that were specific to Dominion's election management software, the system, right, that runs the servers and everything. He released it, and he released other images of the hard drives. Now, what he did was he presented that the material came from a brave whistleblower inside Dominion voting systems who was exposing remote access capabilities and fraud. And he hyped it as major proof of tampering. Now, I know everybody got all wrapped up in Dominion, and here's proof and here's proof. But what happened, evidently how this trail happened about for Colorado, as you look at the investigative practice, as you look at the information, when that stuff hit the screen, then the state was able to see it. They were able to trace it. They were able to 100% see it came from Mesa County. What did that do? That is 100% absolute unwalkable back proof that the systems were in fact illegally accessed. It is that linchpin, that one thing is the entire fact. It's fact. You can't hide it. The entire fact that allowed the state of Colorado to open an official investigation, to make the declaration our systems were breached, to indict and to convict. That one thing. And here I always thought, and I've always told you this, I mean, you know this, I don't watch other people's stuff, so I was completely out of the loop. So yeah, it was Code Monkey putting stuff on Telegram. But when you back it up, it was actually this guy, Conan, standing inside there under another person's name, using the credentials, saying he was the employee when he wasn't. FaceTiming during this getting into the system. Let's find out. Does that make any sense to you? Why would anybody in the world FaceTime? If you're in getting into a system, whatever it was, if you're getting into a system, Why would you FaceTime? That doesn't make any sense to me. When in fact, it is the linchpin that proved the case beyond a shadow of a doubt for the state. There was no way to back out of it. No way. They couldn't deny it. They couldn't unexpose it. They couldn't undo it. That is the actual linchpin. So why would this fellow Conan, and correct me if I keep on saying O'Brien, Conan Hayes, the surfer, charged with this, but he's just exactly like Dennis Montgomery. Well, but he can't testify. He can't be called as a witness. How would somebody be so stupid to leave that trail for the bad guys to find? Isn't that odd? I'm going, how stupid can anybody be to FaceTime, then brag about it, then talk about it? Now, I never understood why Patrick said, well, I'll swap with Tina. They can put me in jail. Maybe that was it, because it was that video that did it. But why would this fellow, Conan, even think to FaceTime? Why was that passed around? How and why did it even hit the internet unprotected? Because that was the actual trail that put the county on it. I'm like, that's fucking stupid. So let's go back in time. Okay? Let's go back in time and let's just kind of look at this just so we're all got it in our head. What did the system do to Tina Peters? How did they do it? Etc. Now, this judge made several rulings. You're going to hear a lot of this. You're going to hear this stuff. Well, they didn't let the evidence be presented. The state charged Tina Peters with violating the systems. The state charged Tina Peters with illegal access of the systems. The state charged Tina Peters with criminal impersonation. Now, let me ask you a question. Why were experts about how Dominion did it in 2020 the defense? Can you answer that for me? Tina has very specific charges. Not a single witness, in my opinion, were there to defend Tina doing her job. They wanted to get on record, well, the 2020 election was stolen. It was Dominion. Now, I've told you this. I've never made any bones about it. This is where if Mike Lindell was paying for her legal fees, he was trying to defend himself against his $1 billion lawsuit, and it had nothing to do with Tina. And so if you were to look at, we can now look at all the pretrial stuff, right? We can now look at 100% at the pretrial stuff. And when we look at all the rulings now, based on the rule of law, the judge disqualified testimony saying Tina Peters is being charged with crimes against the state, illegally accessing the system. I went over them. I don't have to go over them again. But you want to bring on people to talk about the 2020 election. And in this case, the 2020 election was never in question. Do you see that as a defense strategy? This woman's put on trial for crimes against her state, which are very set out, not following the rules she swore to uphold, very specific. But your whole defense is Dominion did it, the 2020 election was stolen. Now, I told you that way back when, that it was Mike Lindell trying to put Dominion on claims. So, what was their evidence they wanted to present in order to defend Tina? So now we're going to talk about the evidence. What evidence did the defense want to bring forward to defend Tina? All I'm doing here in this one is I'm giving you a deeper clarification of why I personally have challenge with this, right? The evidence they wanted to bring forward is we took a copy of the hard drives. We took a copy of the hard drives. Most people know if you go in and steal something, what you have stolen, police or otherwise, you cannot use as evidence. You understand that, right? You use deception, you use crime, and it's the same with any policing structure, use illegal search and seizure, illegal break-in, right? Right? It cannot be used as evidence. Can't be used as evidence against the bad guys or for the bad guys. Can't be used as evidence against the good guys or for the good guys. Meaning trying to defend themselves, they did it. They couldn't do it. And so what was the main claim? What was the main claim in the defense's case? The one thing that they actually proved, according to a statute. Now, the defense proved exactly one claim with this information. What was the claim they proved? Do you know? And you're right. That's the rule of evidence. Anyway, you got to have the rule of evidence, right? But they proved exactly one thing did in fact occur. What was it they proved occurred? That there was some records of the 2020 election which were deleted. Therefore, they violated federal retention laws, U.S. Code 5220-701. How many times have I told you that? Now, I've told you so many times that you got U.S. Code 5220-701, which preceded by 74 and 84 before that, 42. But it's, what is the penalty for deleting such records? I've told you this enough. You should know it by now. If you delete federal election records of any kind, what is the penalty? Anybody remember? A $1,000 fine. The only thing that the defense proved, you got it right, Mathis, you got it right. The only thing that the state proved, or that the defense proved against the state, was some records were deleted. It's a misdemeanor and it's a $1,000 fine. So they had to flex. In the flex, here's all they could present. We think there are weird databases here. That's the next claim. We think there are weird databases here. The next claim was the software you used, the voting system, the particular version of the voting system you used was not federally certified at the time. That's the third claim. First claim is you didn't keep the records right. That's a $1,000 fine. The second claim was, well, there's all these weird databases here. The third claim was the system wasn't compliant. You didn't use the right software you're supposed to use. Now, what does that fall under? I've told you this 100 times. It is called the Election Assistance Commission Voluntary Voting System Standards. You weren't using the right software. Pop quiz. Is that a crime? No, never has been. Is it a crime? No. The last claim that was in there was some of this looks irregular. There is unauthorized access. We can't tell who it was. Now, that's the entire defense evidence group, including two other things. Now, I'm giving you the things that the judge just basically dismissed. The judge said, okay, well, this is a trial against Tina for breaking these state and federal crimes, primarily state crimes, but you want to say, well, but you deleted records. It's not a tit for tat. They're there to defend Tina. Judge says that's not a defense. Then they said, well, there's extra databases here. Judge says that's not what Tina's here for in trial. You can't use that. Then they say, well, you weren't using the right software. And the judge goes, it's voluntary to begin with, and that's not why Tina's on trial. And then they said, well, there's all these irregularities here. And they go, wait a minute. Tina has very specific charges. You've got to defend her charges. Well, we don't think it looked right. And then they presented two other things. The next thing they tried to present was, well, there was an algorithm running on the machines. So the judge was given kind of a purview of how they wanted to do it. Now, that algorithm was Dr. Frank. And the judge and other experts looked at his formula for doing it and said, this is total bullshit. And the judge says, I'm not going to allow this. This has nothing to do with Mesa County, Colorado, because none of this data comes from Mesa County, Colorado. And he says, we're not running a case to basically say the 2020 election was rigged. That's not even what this case is. So the court booted that one. Now you can see, just looking at it on the face of law on the books, you can see exactly, and I'm not excusing this judge. I think he was abhorrent. But that kind of stuff was, how would they ever be allowed, right? How would that ever be allowed? Now, there was one key defense witness that they did allow. Who was the key defense witness? And you're right. The charges had nothing to do with the election systems. Now you're getting the point. The state brought her up on charges that have nothing to do with the election systems. Everybody else was trying to say it's election system, election system, election system, election systems. The next witness that they allowed and this ended up being probably the key witness. Again, this is all easier after the fact to look at the data, but we're analyzing, and here's what I'm doing so you understand what's going on. Today's T-Day. It's Tina Peters to be released today. So all we're doing is reviewing, after all this crap and time and trauma and junk, what really was the case. Well, he did allow Sharona Bishop to testify as a witness. Here are the things she testified for. She testified over 2 days, August 8th through 9th, and this was 2024. She basically claimed that Gerald Wood, the guy's badge who was used by Conan Hayes dressing and playing like he's this real guy, but he's not. She's testifying he was a willing participant. Yeah, you know we're on Lindell's network as America's Mom. I have a question here. Here's my question. If Gerald Wood was a willing participant, why didn't Gerald Wood go in with his credentials and access the system? That's just my first question. If Gerald Wood was an actual participant, I'm going to go in, we're going to get this data, here it is. I am a participant. Why did he not go in? Why did the person, Hayes, use his name tag and dress like him if he was a willing participant? Well, her first testimony was Gerald Wood was a participant. He was a willing participant. That he said Conan can use his identity. So they bring Gerald Wood up on the stand. Gerald Wood says, no, I did not. You see the conflict there? Okay. Now, the basis of Bishop's claims of what she found, that, because remember, Bishop brought in Dr. Frank. Bishop introduced Dr. Frank to Tina. Okay? So here's how that happened. Prior to April 2021, so we're talking a half a year after the 2020 election. Prior to April 2021, Tina Peters never filed a complaint, never said anything was wrong with her election, never asked anybody to look at the election, never said, hey, I think something wrong. Not at all. Not at all. In fact, Tina certified her election. Tina certified her election. Not only did she certify her election and never file a complaint, but there was, as mandated by the state, a risk limiting audit. I do think they're bullshit, but that's not the point. Tina certified the results, never filed a complaint, and when the state came back and did an additional risk limited audit, she signed off on that too. Her name is on these paperworks. No problems. Certified. So what happened between November of 2020 and April of 2021? Well, somebody just said it. She became the replacement for the PCAPs. There were no PCAPs. So Tina became the replacement. They didn't have PCAPs, but they had Tina now. And here's what happened. Tina Peters never, ever, 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 ever claimed anything was wrong with her elections. She certified them 3 times over, which is why she was not afforded whistleblower status. She's not a whistleblower. She certified it all. So what happened is sometime in April or whatever was going on, Lindell happened, you're right. Tina Peters gets introduced in Grand Junction, to Dr. Frank. Dr. Frank gave a presentation on the secret algorithm that rigged the 2020 election. Tina went to that. Tina said, I don't believe it. Sharona got then Dr. Frank to meet with Tina in person that same week. He stayed over. He wasn't just speaking. He stayed over. And to tell her, you've got to investigate fraud. Okay? So that's kind of where this begins. Okay? Now, two things are happening at this exact same time. The only reason we have all this information is because all this time has passed and you can see the transcripts and you can analyze them, whatever. Two things happen. We have Dr. Frank saying, I looked at the 2010 census. I did some math. I averaged it. I looked at 4 counties in Michigan, and therefore I'm telling you, your county was rigged. And by the way, I need to prove my theory. Will you let me prove my theory in your county? But something else happened. What happened is Sharona Bishop did a canvass, supposedly, of 1,000 homes. So she led an effort to go knocking on doors, saying, knock, 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 knock. Canvassing. Now, you remember that the reason full forensic audits didn't go over in Pennsylvania or Michigan or Wisconsin or Oregon, all these other states that they were planned, is because they said canvass first. Well, there was a canvassing program in Mesa. Here is what was found. They knocked on doors of 1,000 people and said, we asked them, did you vote yes or no? And they basically said they believed that Mesa County showed an error of 5% of people saying, no, I did not vote, but yet the county records show they voted. Now, that's a problem. Granted, you knock on somebody's door, they say, you ask them a question, did you vote in this recent election? And they said, no, I didn't, but they show they voted. Now, she said Mesa County was 5%. She says that in Weld, is that how you say it? Weld, Weld County and Pueblo counties, it was even higher. So the judge says, okay, we will allow you to talk on that. Now, here comes a kicker. The county officials, including the attorneys, both sides, including the judge. Let me say this again. The county officials, meaning the ones working with Tina, the ones working against Tina, the good guys in the state, the bad guys in the state, the Secretary of State, the prosecuting attorneys, the good attorneys, the bad attorneys, at that point asked for, okay, let's look at your specific evidence, the names, the addresses, the documentation, okay? The documentation and the affidavits. Now, there's somebody here in the group saying they were part of the canvassing. Now, I heard a lot about this canvassing. I heard a lot. I'm only giving you facts as we now find after the fact. I was not part of it. I'm only here to talk about how we hurt ourselves. I'm only here to talk about I will never respect that Tina Peters went to prison and the defense was trying to prove the 2020 election was stolen when Tina had nothing to do with that, never said it was, and they let her rot on the vine. Anyway, somebody saying they were part of the county canvass and they had affidavits. Get ready. Not a single bit of the data of the canvasses, including affidavits, were turned over. Now, we got somebody sitting right here. We got somebody sitting right here in chat. I was part of it. We had affidavits. Now, I got a big question for you. Did you know that none of those affidavits are verified data so the state could verify it was surrendered to the court? Folks, we're doing this in real time. I know who you are. I'm just asking a question. Did you know that none of it was turned over to the court? I can't fathom that. I'm not debating. I'm not debating whether it's right or wrong. I know that. I'm trying to figure out, why do we only find out now of that massive canvassing effort that supposedly had evidence of people saying, I didn't vote, and you got affidavits for them? Why was that evidence never handed over to the court, the judge, the prosecutors, or the defense? This is the one thing, it's the only thing that shows, because Tina didn't say it, it's the one thing that shows there may have been a problem. Why wasn't it surrendered? And we all know the voter rolls are crap. We know they're crap. So see, now we got it. The judge said, okay, well, you were here and you did a canvass, yada, 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 yada. But if there's that evidence, why was that evidence not given to the court? That's what I don't get. Now, what the judge said, and this is where the big conflict is. This is where you have to understand the difference between what the judge did or did not allow, which is based on what the state has charged Tina, but what everybody focused on. My biggest beef in all of this, I don't think Tina ever got a defense. Nobody defended Tina. Nobody. Nobody defended Tina. Not a one. Nobody defended Tina. Everybody talked about, well, 2020 and it's the machines and it's Dominion and it's this. No wonder it wasn't allowed. The state, in their entire prosecution, basically said this case is not about voter fraud or election fraud. Now, let me ask you a question. Let's say a thief gets arraigned and indicted and brought up on, you stole Nike shoes from the outlet mall. And they're going to be put on trial. And the defense is, Yes, but black people are suppressed. Here's the history. Here's how it was done. Here's who did it. And it's really just reparations. Would that stand in court as a defense for the person being charged with the crime? Put it in chat. Would that in any way work towards the defense of the person being charged with the crime? No. See, that's the analogy of what happened to Tina here. At all. Who was the single biggest expert that the defense attorneys fought over? He has to testify. If he doesn't testify, you are withholding evidence. He has to testify. Who was that single person they fought the most over? Now, you know, there's all kinds of names involved with this case. All kinds of names. Who was the single number one person that the defense fought for? You've got to hear this guy. You're not hearing the evidence. Wasn't Dr. Frank. Wasn't Dennis Montgomery in PCAPS. Wasn't Conan Hayes. Guess again. Wasn't Code Monkey. The number one fought over witness. Not Lone Raccoon. Nope, not Code Monkey. Not Dr. Frank. Professor Clements. Not Mike Lindell. The number one person that the defense fought for to be allowed on the stand the number one person fought for on the stand. I'm not kidding. I know you think I'm kidding. I know you think I'm kidding. The number one person that the defense fought for to testify was Professor Clements, because he was an election fraud expert and that he could prove, right? He could prove that it happened. Why did the judge not allow him? Now, here's why he got submitted. He is an election fraud expert. He made a documentary on it. He knows how it's done. Remember, in his documentary, he basically shows how the vote was changed live on TV. The judge says, how many times do I have to tell you this case is not about the 2020 election? He was the number one most clearly identified witness for the defense. And every time about they didn't let them in. They didn't let him in. He's an expert on elections. It's kind of funny they keep on saying Jovan didn't do a full forensic audit. The only one who did a full forensic audit was Clements, and them never got the ballots or anything. The judge said it doesn't matter if he's the top expert on election fraud. This trial is not about fraud in the election. This trial is about what Tina Peters has been charged with. I guess I need to make a documentary and then I'd be a real expert. I can't fathom this. Can any of you fathom this? And this is not about people are good and bad, but I can tell you, man, these attorneys, what the fuck? Why would an attorney think that somebody who's never done a forensic audit, never audited an election, only appears on Lindell's TV as an expert, regurgitates everybody else's stuff, makes a documentary that is what is a person that is an expert that's going to get Tina out? I have an issue with this. The entire case for the defense was designed around Clements. Because he did a documentary. And no, I didn't try to make a documentary. There's a documentary in New Hampshire. I'm talking about Tina Peters. That's the topic. Tina Peters, Colorado. So the actual ruling by the judge was, you can't present evidence of election fraud claims because this trial is not about election fraud. You can't present evidence of Dominion voting systems competence, incompetence, or conspiracy because this trial is not about Dominion voting systems. The only evidence they had in the entire case, was they deleted some records and they used the wrong voting software system. But neither one of those, by design by these crooked bastards, are not crimes. They're misdemeanors. So how does that, in the beginning, set Tina free? Right? Now, I'm going to give you a kind of a recount of some of the evidence they're saying was evidence that should have been allowed. The judge ruled during pretrial and whatever, the evidence they wanted to present was, here's our algorithms, here's our theory that the 2020 election was stolen, and Dominions did it. Well, the judge, whether you like him or not, and I think he was a dick, said, I can't allow that in this case because this is not a case about Dominion or Dominion machines or whether the 2020 election was stolen. They did allow a person in. Now, this is one of the new things I only learned this morning. They did allow a person in that had some background in security breaches. And what would they look at? This was a fellow by the name of Doug Gould. Did any of y'all remember that name? Doug Gould. Now, let me read you his background because he has a great background. You ready? Doug Gould is a cybersecurity and computer forensic expert who authored the first two forensic reports commissioned by Tina Peters analyzing Messes County's Dominion voting system. This is, I guess, what Raccoon covered or put his name on. He has a long career. 40 years experience in computer security, network forensic, and incident response. He retired after 31 years with AT&T, chief cyber security strategist, right? At the AT&T Security Center of Excellence. He worked in the early 80s at Bell Lab, pioneering computer forensics. He conducted forensic investigations for the FBI and the U.S. Secret Service. Master's degree in electrical engineering, computer science, computer security, business administration. He holds a CISA certified information systems security professional. He's a certified anti-terrorism specialist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, here's an interesting question. So I get to looking at this guy's testimonies. His testimony was basically the following. These things could possibly happen. What he's presenting in pretrial, et cetera, is these things could happen. Yes, if they weren't if they weren't using the right software, these things could happen. What is the first rule of law in court? These things did happen. Now, let me put it into a different context. If Tina's there for criminally impersonating whatever, wasn't her, for allowing outside access, and that's not supposed to be allowed, for coercion of government employees and all the other crap they threw at her, what does an expert saying these things could happen do with defending Tina? Answer the question. Help me out here. I still cannot see it. What does that have to do with defending Tina against their claims she created or committed crimes? Well, not a damn thing. Now, let me tell you what I learned that just fucking blew my mind. Let's go back when most of you saw me for the first time in December of 2020 testifying in front of the Senate about, look, these ballots weren't folded. It's very simple. This was supposed to be a mail-in election. These ballots are not from a mail-in election predominantly. The numbers don't match. Now, where did I learn that? Well, immediately, right after the election occurred in Atrium County, Michigan. This is where Matt DePerno had the right and has the information. Okay. And I'm watching little clips on TV and I'm seeing people's testimonial. They're there and they're saying this ballot is, because they'd seen my stuff, said this ballot isn't folded. And this is supposed to be a mail-in ballot, but it's not folded at all. And supervisors were basically going, shut up, you're here to count the ballots. If you won't count the ballots, we're going to kick you out. So I already knew, you already knew, the world already knew in Antrim County that we could see stacks of pristine ballots, but yet it was supposed to be mail-in. Well, in Antrim County, there was supposedly an audit done. Who was the audit team? Who was the audit team in Antrim? Well, it's interesting. The audit team was Doug Logan, which eventually got the Arizona audit, Ben Cotton, who was Cipher, which eventually got the Arizona audit. I'm the only one, my team, which is completely agnostic and out there, got it. But the actual audit and founding was run by something called AZOG. AZOG, Allied Security Operations Group. You might remember me talking about this character, Russ Ramsland, when my team is on the ground in Georgia. We're seeing all these horrible ballots come in. We're seeing all of these cross-communication devices in the data centers. I had people glom onto me, says, let's help you out. And then they wanted me to do a debrief. The person they wanted me to debrief was Colonel Phil Waldron, who I did. And on that phone was Russ Ramsland. Now, very quickly, I figured out, wait a minute. What the fuck are you saying you're going to help me prepare my affidavit? And you're now portraying I'm part of your team. I'm not fucking part of your team. I have nothing to do with you. And I figured out this attorney had kind of infiltrated me. And they're doing stuff behind the scenes. Well, that was Russ Ramsland and AZOG. I didn't even know it. What company kept popping up in all of this stuff across the United States? AZOG and Russ Ramsland. When I tell them, here's how it's communicating, when you saw me in Georgia saying, look, we're looking at the poll books right now. We're in the system. We can see everything. When we're running all across the state to see how many poll places are doing it, this Russ Ramsland character goes on TV. I and my team and experts, and we've discovered this, and here it is. From the moment that broadcast aired, all of those devices got shut off. Who was the very first person to say, well, if you're not going to play with our team, they're not going to use your stuff because your stuff isn't peer reviewed? Who was that? Colonel Phil Waldron. Well, here's the kicker. This is who Mike Gould, in this case with Tina, does work for. Here's AZOG and Russ Ramsland again. And they're in Atrium. And they're in this. And they're in that. And does that not stink to you? I didn't know that. I didn't know that till a few hours ago. I'm going, what? This is an AZOG Russ Ramsland guy? In case you didn't remember, when I disassociated early on, when I knew something was up, it's because somehow I got an email sent to me, and it was the attack on me. He's a failed treasure hunter. He's this and this. It came from AZOG and Ramsland. I called them. I said, no fucking wonder Republicans get their asses kicked if you do shit like this. Oh, no. That's just opposition research. That's just nothing. We just need to know what they'll attack you over. I cut them off. I testify in Georgia. That's the article that appears, the exact article that appears on the Secretary of State's website about me. I'm the only person in the world that has their own dedicated page on the Secretary of State's website to try to discredit me. And what was the source? AZOG. Here it is. I'm trying to look at these experts, right? That were there supposedly to defend Tina. None of them defended Tina on any front in any way. Here's the total findings of all of those reports and every bit of evidence. Now, first, I want to know, do you remember how many actual votes they showed were changed in the election from Tina's elections? How many votes? Can you remember how many votes I told you? This is evidence in a trial to protect Tina. To get Tina exonerate it out, how many different vote swapping, vote changes events go on? Zero. Not a one. Not a one. Not a single incident votes. The main claim of report number 1 is the following. Now remember, Tina's on trial for allowing illegal entry into the machines, criminal impersonation, intimidation of county employees, and all this other stuff. Vote number 1 said, the report number 1, ready? There were 28,989 log files deleted. We're looking at this, the filter through Tina. We'll call it 30,000 log files deleted. What does that have to do with Tina and the charges that were brought against Tina? Nothing. That had to do with what they felt was wrong. The second claim, that the system didn't meet the 2002 voluntary voting system guidelines standard. That's the whole second claim in that report. They didn't meet the voluntary standards. Well, what's the first thing that kicks that out of the water? It's voluntary. Don't you know the definition of voluntary? See, that's my problem with this crooked system. All the rules are voluntary. You can't have voluntary rules, but you can't do anything about it. No vote swapping, no vote flipping. No, they took this many votes and they put it here or whatever. They basically said this was an update which replaces files, and files were replaced. Second report. This is Mr. Gould again. First report was 83 pages. Here's the fellow's second report. The second report that they wanted to present as evidence, again, this is Tina's trial. Tina has been charged with tampering with data, with theft of data, with criminal impersonation, with intimidating county workers, and not following the election guidelines that she's supposed to follow. That was the charges. That's all it was. Nothing else. So the second report they wanted to submit as evidence is that there were 36 wireless components that could possibly allow remote computer connection. In other words, when you look at the election management software and you look at the machines that report to it, between either Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or cellular modem, there were 36 wireless components which could allow access. And you're right, no enforcement means no law. They missed the word voluntary. Now, if you showed they could have access, is that a crime? If you were in the vicinity of a murder and the police were investigating and they found out that the murderer was using their phone before they killed the person, but you're kind of standing in the group and you had a phone which could make a call, well, does that make you the murderer? Somebody said, Tina for governor of Colorado. I think that'd be a mistake. Let me tell you why, Miss Montgomery. Because Tina believed all these people were working in her interest, and this is how it was done. That means Tina's mind's captured. That means Tina basically thinks it was done this way or got convinced it was done this way. That's the opposite of what we need as a governor. We need a governor that understands exactly how it's done. But let me say, you were in a crowd, somebody using a phone killed this guy. Just because you had a phone, does that mean you committed the crime? And so you got to understand why this couldn't be allowed. And so they tried to say the system wasn't air gapped, right? And it was illegally configured. Let me give you an example. If the Election Assistance Commission says you can use this Dell computer and it has this card and processor in it, and the Election Assistance Commission approves it, even if that card does have Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, is it illegal? No. See, having a wireless component is not illegal. Having the ability to do Bluetooth is not illegal. It never has been a crime. It's just been a contradictory statement that these things are air-gapped. Let's say there was no Bluetooth and no Wi-Fi, but they have a LAN connection, so they can pull the information from the computer, meaning they can sit in another room and look and pull it off. Even that LAN connection can be compromised. Does that mean it is against the law? No. See, that's the whole issue with all of this. Period. The judge also wouldn't allow it because they said this is a copy of the drive, and we looked at a copy of the drive. The number one reason they would not allow the copy of the drive to be used is because why? So they said, we made copies of the drives. Now let's forget the fact that they were taken under false pretenses, according to the court. Let's set that aside. The stolen stuff. Let's just set that aside, because in the court's eyes, they said it was stolen. Of course, you can't use that. Everybody knows that, right? There was another predominant reason why they would not allow it to be used. It was a combination of two things. One, it was just a copy. And you can't confirm this is a copy because here's the original, because you didn't have the original, you only have a copy. And one key factor was missing. What was it? No chain of custody. You could not prove beyond a shadow of a doubt. Now you understand why all our coding on the ballots and the documents and the images go all the way back to the drives. Every one of them signed off on, every one of them's coded, whatever. Zero chain of custody. Now, let me ask you a question. If somebody said, I made a copy of such and such's computer, and they were planning an assassination of a president, and let's say you get brought to court, the people making the claims have a copy. Here it is. Here it is. Your smart attorney goes, show me the original drive, show me the differences, and show me how I know where that drive came from. You can't. So now the question is, would you want to be prosecuted on that? You can't. Because at its heart, it's only a copy of what you're saying happened with no verification, with no chain of custody, with no authentication, on top of the fact you technically acquired it illegally as proven by the court. Can you see where this falls apart very early? The definition they tried to use in number 2 was uncertified software was present. There's no law that says uncertified software can't be present. It's not a thing. Just like they said, well, there's wireless components. That's not a thing. And then they said, well, it was illegally configured, which is just a play on words that it was there. You don't even know that you used it. So there was nothing there, which I told you there's nothing here in these reports. It's all could. Report number 3 that they wanted to put in evidence. And this was the one that was Walter Daughtry and the Lone Raccoon. It basically said there was unauthorized creation of an adjudication database. Unauthorized creation of adjudication database. Their basis was there's one here and there's one here. When you see multiple adjudication databases, how would you determine it was created in an unauthorized manner? Or it shouldn't be there to begin with? You would have to know who did it, right? And you would have to know their intent, that they did it for a nefarious reason. Now let me pose something else for you. You're running an election. You're doing adjudication. You think you have adjudication done. Therefore, it's stopped. You come back through and go, oh shit, we forgot to process these ballots. You run those. It also has an adjudication file for those ballots. They're not the same because they're 2 different batches. Is that a unauthorized setup of adjudication? It's just a simple question. Is that what makes it an unauthorized database? See, you got to understand, all these guys are throwing could-haves. Well, I think that's opinion. Opinion is not allowed in court. That's why when we do forensics, we don't go on opinion. Here's the paper. Here's what the paper said based on what you claimed. And here's when you ran them in. That's not our stuff. That's your stuff. And here it is. I don't have an opinion on it. You have to answer it. Why'd you run in 118,019 ballots a month after the election? Forensics versus all this other stuff. Okay. So here's what they said now. Well, there were thousands of ballots reprocessed. So you have the election, then you have thousands of other ballots reprocessed. Now I'm going to stretch your brain on this. What would cause that? Put your thinking cap on. You got an election management software system. It runs an election. You got additional ballots reprocessed. What would cause that? You want to look at it again. You want to do a risk limiting audit. You want to double check that the batches were right. So what do you do in that event? You reprocess them again. All I'm saying is there a logical reason for it being there? The risk limiting audit, which Tina signed off on, is exactly how they do it. Does that mean it was nefarious? You run a batch, the ballots don't match, something's wrong. What do? You rerun them. Find out what the number is. it creates a separate batch automatically. And then the people that run the elections have to decide, well, which one was correct. But you know what it doesn't do? Doesn't modify any votes or anything. It just means they reran them again. So the whole basis of number 3 was thousands of ballots were reprocessed. Does that mean anything? Here's why it doesn't mean anything, and I want to explain this to you, and this is why the full forensic audit in Arizona is the real deal. If you had 2 million ballots run through the system, and then all of a sudden, in another one here, you find 500,000 additional ballots were run later. Well, see, it could be multiple things. They could say, wait a minute, we think we had some problems with the drop boxes. We're going to rerun all the drop box ballots. Could that be done? It could. It could. Does it mean it's nefarious? No. What is the one thing that would prove the rerunning of the ballots was nefarious? There's only one thing in the world that proves the rerunning of the ballots was nefarious. What is it? You have the pre-image, you have the post-image, you have the EMS, and you check it directly back to the physical ballot that went into the machine. And if over here it's changed and that's not what went in, you have a crime. What did these guys have? Nothing. They just say these look rerun. There's only one actual piece of evidence binding by law. What was the original intent of the voter? What is the only thing that shows the original intent of the voter? The paper ballot. What is the number one thing that they avoided in all of this? The paper ballot. Even in Maricopa, Oliver, none of the numbers match. None of the numbers match. Not a one. None of the numbers match. I don't have to explain it. They have to explain it. So in number 3, the whole thing was, well, these were rerun. Now, yes, they said they're missing hash files. That's questionable. But who did it? Do you know what the rule of thumb is? When all else fails, throw out everything electronic, hand count every physical ballot. This is why I told you long ago that the physical paper's everything. Now, in Tina's case, my biggest beef is I don't think she had to go to jail. I can't even fathom why the expert advice is, well, this guy was in on it, said you could use your ID. If he was in on it, he would have gone. Now let's follow the money. A lot of the people involved in this, Colonel Sean Smith, one of them won't debate me, Mark Cook, who did, but he only wanted to give his website out the whole time. All the same cast of characters, even down to Azog. I didn't know that one until just today. Where'd the money go? Who funded all of this? Who funded all of this? Well, interesting. I knew it, but I didn't have the numbers. Yes, Mike Lindell funded it. And Mike Lindell raised money for it. But the funding mechanism for a lot of this, which I found was very interesting, I didn't know this because, Dr. Frank runs around saying, I'm not employed and I don't get paid to do this. Mike Lindell doesn't pay me to do it. Well, actually, Mike Lindell was paying through Cause of America. You funded Mike. Mike Lindell funded Cause of America. Cause of America was being funded by Mike to the tune of $200,000 a month. $200,000 a month. That's where the money was actually going through. All of this came out in Mike Lindell's deposition and everything. $200,000 a month. Cause of America is supposedly a volunteer organization. We got people right here that volunteer for Cause of America. Did you donate your time? Mike's funding it $200,000 a month. For what exactly? Cause of America was paying people speaking fees and other stuff. What exactly was being funded for $200,000 a month? Supposedly they're a nonprofit, but Mike Lindell was funding them $200,000 a month. I'm just trying to understand this. Technology is very expensive. Lord knows, I know that. Right? Mike Lindell didn't fund the audit in Arizona. What is that? Just help me understand what is that? Dr. Frank swears he was not paid by Lindell. Lindell's testimony basically said, I hired Dr. Frank as an expert witness and get paid project by project. Both confirmed by Dr. Frank, both confirmed by Lindell's testimony. What is that? Look, all of this takes money. I'm not begrudging that. All of this takes money. Everybody works takes money. All of it. But I'm just trying to follow the money. And then they had Frank's speech. All the same people involved. Frank's speech, which is now Lindell Media Group. What was their net income? February of 2005. Mike Lindell's network. What was their income for the network? February 2005. $7,239 for the quarter. Says that Mike Lindell spent $936,000 to buy Frank TV. I kind of remember that number. I told Mike, you're a fool. Don't buy it. There's nothing there to buy. They're just rebroadcasting through Rumble and stuff. You have nothing to buy, Mike. Mike went ahead and bought it. $936,000. I don't get all of these things. And now I'm kind of worried about where does all of this head? I love Tina to death, but I told Tina early on, Tina, you are in trouble. Everybody, the judge was corrupt. The judge was corrupt. I just gave you, now that we can see all the filings and stuff, what Tina was charged for. I think you can even kind of make sense that you can't have a case you can't have a case where somebody's being tried by the state for allowing unauthorized access, but the evidence you want to put on is about a company named Dominion and 2020. I would assume you understand that, right? But you keep on hearing, and by the way, I think that judge was an ass, total ass. I think the convictions were egregious. But the only thing they had was you deleted these records, which is $1,000 fine, meaning the defense against the state. Well, you didn't comply to the system, which is voluntary. But none of the evidence was actual. They didn't show a single vote changed. In fact, they didn't show votes. They couldn't see them. They didn't show a single ballot changed. They didn't have them, and they couldn't see them. The whole thing was built, well, it could, 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 well, it could. And then I'm really puzzled, even some of you guys here that participated in the canvassing there, trying to do what's right by your state, to find out none of that evidence was actually given to the court, released, or whatever. And then once again, it's all the same people again. And oh, by the way, how did the state explain it? Human error. And that's indefensible. And it's just a boo-boo. I've always told you about this boo-boo things. Thank you, guys. Thank you for that generous tip. It all goes towards election integrity. But to find out none of that was submitted, and to find out that their star witness is going to be Professor Clements from New Mexico, who you think is a law professor, he was in a business finance class. Business finance class. Who talks about busting rings and busting mafia and busting cartels. You can't find a one of those. He participated in one high-profile case. One, exactly one. The rest you can't find. Other than that, he handled probation and DUIs for a very short window of time and then was gone. What am I missing here? And even to me, no matter how much I hate the crooked system, you can't put somebody on trial saying they committed a crime and they say, okay, show me the evidence. Well, he posted mean things on Facebook. He cussed, he talked out loud, and this is what I think, and I heard he was a bad guy. That's not our legal system. But in this twist, and I don't believe any of these guys are innocent, by the way, though, folks. I don't. They make everybody attack the legal system. When you look at it, the judge did allow testimony that, hey, Tina was doing her job preserving the records. But the reason it fell apart is because Tina certified it all the way through. Everything that convinced Tina something was wrong comes months and years after the election. Do you see the conflict with that? Now, in all of this, it destabilized our country. That's what it is. See, this trial with Tina was about a security breach, unauthorized access, deception, and official misconduct. I'm going to say that again. Tina was brought up on charges regarding security breach, unauthorized access, deception, and official misconduct. This is not Tina's fault. It's not. I think this thing stunk from the beginning, because even the basic person who watched a little bit of Forensic Files and a little bit of CSI knows, well, you can't go back. Oh, I think that was done. Let me go. When she's on record of saying and certifying it and saying nothing was wrong, she can't be a whistleblower. I understand the attempt to do it, but you can't do it. You also can't bring witnesses that had nothing to do with it and weren't there. Here's what I think happened. This is what continued to sell. They swapped the votes. It was the machine story. What all of these have in common, even to this day, Venezuela, Serbia, Wakanda, all of them today. No, see, Cartduck says the judge should have said $1,000 fine paid in 30 days, court dismissed. No, here's why. Tina did participate in a security breach, whether you like it or not. Tina did allow people, not her, but unauthorized people to access it under false pretenses and false ID. Tina did allow that. This couldn't have been dismissed. For God's sakes, you have testimony from Dr. Frank recorded, presented from the court, and says, Tina's saying, well, we can't get access. And Dr. Frank said, well, I got people I know who can. I got people I know who could do. We could do it for you. Why do we not focus on that? And here's why. Because, see, I think all of this has an agenda. The agenda is the system wants you to look at the machines and to look at foreign countries and not look at our own country that's doing this to us. Not looking at the paper. That's why the paper is priceless. Now, Tina, she's going to get out of prison today. God bless her. Hug her to death. But she'll still have a criminal record. Yes, she could go into election integrity. But that scares me. Why does it scare me? Because she thinks a guy can predict with 99.9% accuracy, if he looks at the 2010 census and 4 counties in Michigan, applies the math, and that tells you what happened in Mesa, Arizona. That's an 80 billion to 1 odds, certified, by the way. And if Tina believes that, I don't want Tina as a governor. What Tina really is Tina, the system used, ironically, malfeasance and maladministration to convict her. The same thing that should have been presented in these cases, maladministration, malfeasance. So you can look at maladministration, and if it was done corruptly or covertly or repeatedly, that's malfeasance, and then it's a crime. That's what they did to Tina. They perp walk her on the law. Somebody says you're going to talk. I don't know if I'll talk to Tina. I don't know if her number's still good. I think I'd rather sit back and watch. See what happened. I have nothing to answer other than I feel horrible for her. Because the experts that were supposed experts weren't experts. The experts presenting information were presenting information based on an agenda, not a fact of what happened. It was based on what could happen. Mr. Gould has impeccable credentials, but destroys it for me when it's the same people all over again. This is a mess, but I want to let you know something. This is our mess. This is not the system's mess. You know that, right? This is what the system does. This is how the system profits. This is how the system keeps things confused. The system does not work on absolutes. Here it is, black and fucking white. Here's where you did it. Why doesn't the system do it? They need you caught up in obscurities, bigger fucking conspiracies, bigger things, foreign intrigue, all this other fuckity-do shit. Well, on Facebook, he posted about Satan. That means he's bad. That's all bullshit. You wouldn't want to be on trial with that kind of flimsy evidence yourself. But the only thing in any of these cases that is evidence of anything wrong in an election is the physical ballot. But see, Tina was charged with maladministration that led to malfeasance, that led to charges of a crime that was proven by the court. And that's what people have to understand. You think the 2020 election was on trial. That's because Mike Lindell and team led you to believe it was about the 2020 fucking election. No, this was a precious woman's life who was doing her job. Her husband was ill. He died during the process. She lost a son, lost everything. This was about saving Tina's life. But since you control the attorneys and you're paying the money, no, don't worry, we got you covered. No, guys. Nothing was proved by cloning those drives. In fact, you hurt the process. And you put a woman behind bars. You proved nothing. I even had this conversation. Well, I'll stand behind Dr. Frank because a friend of mine and I canvassed those homes. Okay, if the canvas was right with fucking David's, where is it? Why didn't you give it to the court? It's why Code Monkey got caught. I got this from a Dominion whistleblower. No, you didn't. You got it from a FaceTime from the perp to Patrick Byrne who talked about it. Y'all copied it, put it out, and you didn't scrub it and clean it to make sure nobody could see. You're the one that tipped the police. You're the one that tipped the state authorities. And from that fucking release, everything else followed. Everything else followed. I'll remind you that again. When they're doing this operation to go in and protect the trusted build, it's a guy with fake credentials using a fake name who ironically can't testify, just like Dennis Montgomery. Fucking FaceTiming during it. Watch what we're doing. Look at here. Hey, cool. Hey, we just stormed the Capitol. That kind of bullshit. Then it goes out to social media. Then it posts here, and then it gets taken by the Gateway pundit, and boom. And that is what triggered everything. Now, here's the question. Is it possible that any one case could have so many fucking idiots in it? I can see an idiot or two idiots or three idiots, but every bit of it, whoever thought a defense was, well, it could have happened. Well, it could have happened. See, in this chaos, I see design. I see this by design. At some point in time, all of the preponderance of coincidences become, in fact, conclusive evidence theirself. Nobody could make all of these fucking mistakes. So why did it happen? But at the end of the day, I have to take Tina Peters for her word. And prior to that Grand Junction meeting and pushing by Sharona and others and Dr. Frank's fucking theory, Tina had signed off on her election 3 times and had no problems. And look at what she gave up because she believed somebody. And nobody ever asked for proof. Nobody ever said, show me. Nobody ever said, well, what do you think about this? And people that push back on the Dr. Frank's algorithm, what'd the right tell you? Well, they're just kook jobs. They're owned by the system. They're this. When the math proves it out. And at its simplest core, if somebody's going to go in to your government facility using a fake name and a fake ID and they're going to retrieve the information for you under a fake name and a fake ID. And when you fucking need them most to say it's bad, they say, well, I can't because I'm a protected asset, so I can't testify. That's Dennis Montgomery all over again. See, the state's job was to prove that Tina actually broke laws and how she handled the equipment in 2021. That was it. It was not to litigate the 2020 election. For me, I think Tina got sacrificed. To me, this smacks of a setup or just the most ungodly incompetence there are. Now, I'm a meticulous note keeper. I watch kind of all these things go and stuff, and you see what people claim, and none of it. You can't say, well, Tina did this because she thought the election in 2020 was stolen, and that was her motivation. And so she began to think it was compromised after she certified it. You can't get out of what was done. At its heart, the state was prosecuting a security breach. That's why it stuck, folks. Egregious conviction, but yes, it stuck. Tina's trial team was trying to do a stop the steal trial, and they have nothing to do with each other. But from Atrium, now to Georgia, now to all these other states, don't you find it weird that every single one of the same supposed experts were there? And they have a lot of other common denominalities, common denominators. Denominalities is right. They were all at January 6th. Other people got arrested, but they didn't. You can't find their backgrounds or what they did before this. Is it just me, folks? Is it just me? Why was the person who actually impersonated an official of the state not indicted? I don't know what is in store for Tina. At best, Tina could become an expert on here's why we have to focus on provable, factual paper evidence. That paper evidence is the ballot. I think if Tina goes around harping on the machines and that becomes her mantra, she's been hijacked, I would feel horrible for that. I think this was handled wrong from the beginning. I think Tina suffered for it and lost a lot. Could Tina become an expert witness on what is prosecutable evidence? You better believe it. Could Tina become an expert on why paper ballots must stay and we must always have paper ballots and we must demand to see the paper ballots and we got to not worry about cast vote records and that stuff? We got to see the paper ballots every time. Yes. Could she become a proponent? We got to clean our voter rolls because that's where the fat is. Yes. But I don't like any of this, but this is why I'm not popular. And they're all making the rounds on Tina. Tina's going to be free. We helped get her free. We helped get her free. You heard a lot where the court judge was bad. The court was corrupt. You didn't hear him say, but I helped put her in jail. But I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I never had any fucking evidence. You don't hear that part. It is crazy. Gave Ruby a Medal of Freedom, Tina prison cell. But that one comment, and that's where I'm going to close on it. That one comment proves they took somebody who did something for the system. They held them up so it'd be almost, could never be impugned because she got the Medal of Freedom with Ruby. All of this, in all of it, what we should learn from all of this is don't rely on headlines. Demand your expert really fucking be an expert. Demand experts show you proof, and the burden of proof is prosecutable proof, not theory. I hope we don't go to a law system that's based on theory. I hope we don't. I hope it's only based on hard evidentiary facts. Hopefully, in my tenure in this is to pass on to you a high standard, and that high standard is demand facts. Got to be able to show it. Got to start from the beginning. You got to be able to show it. It can't be on theory. But I think we live in a world where we're mass promoted, and it's horrible. But that's our fault. That's our fault. And the system chooses a lot of things that it wants you to believe. And there's bad actors all over the place, posing as good actors. There's a lot of good actors that the system will tell you are bad actors. But the commonality is we're all caught in this mess. I can't answer for why Tina's legal team did the way it is or any of this, but I can ask you to raise your standards. And I think if you raise your standards, and if you're willing to be held accountable to high standards, then you should be a person who demands those same standards from the so-called experts and do not give them a pass just because they say they're an expert. I just don't think you should do that. And I think if we all upgrade our standards of expectation and we inspect what we expect, we're all better for it. But at the end of the day, every bit of it comes down to evidence. I want to remind you, I got a special broadcast this 2 Central Time today. It's the only time we could schedule to get it done.
The upcoming 2026 midterms could be a bloodbath for Republicans? How? Consider this. On Election Day 2008, Barack Obama received 69 million votes. In his second term, he racked up 65 million votes, and he was considered the Democrat rock star president. Then Hillary ran against Donald Trump. She received the same 65 million votes. But come 2020, Joe Biden supposedly received 81 million votes. Was he really more popular than Obama or Hillary? Of course not. But that is not the half of it. In the 2024 election, Kamala Harris.
I hit the wrong button because I have to pee-pee. You can see my eyes are watering. Here's the program this afternoon.
Warning. Whoever controls the AI data centers controls the electricity, the water, the internet, and the digital economy. This comes from Lindell TV personality, Mike Dillon. He's blowing the whistle on AI data centers. Monday, June 1st live on Cut the Crap Show, join host Jovan Hutton Pulitzer while he hosts Mike Dillon with tough answers and questions about, as Mike puts it, the United States is building a digital empire and nobody asked you. The AI revolution is just to control your life. Mike says, this isn't about innovation, it's about control, and promises to expose how Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Klaus Schwab, Benjamin Netanyahu, and Donald Trump all conspiring together for the benefit of the billionaire class. Dillon claims, your vote wasn't asked for. Your input wasn't wanted. Your concerns weren't considered. Why? Because this is the billionaire class's dream scenario. That's Monday, June 1st, on The Cut, the crap show found at rumble.com/Jovan Hutton Pulitzer. See you there.
I think data centers is one of the most important things we're facing. And if we're going to get it right, we're going to handle it right, we have to know the truth. We have to separate fact from fiction. We have to do it with absolute authority about how these things work, what's going on, what are cause and effect, what's the upside, what's the downside, and everything else. So make sure you join me. That's 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. I truly love you all. Thanks for joining me.
Here's what is inside the pharmacy. Grow Soil Bible. Beautiful gardens, bountiful harvests, and homesteading abundant black gold. For too long, modern agriculture has poisoned the very ground beneath our feet. Synthetic NPK fertilizers delivered bigger yields at a devastating cost. They wiped out the teeming microbial life that once made soil rich, alive, and endlessly productive, trapping us in a cycle of chemical dependence and dying farmland. Now is the time to fight back. The Grow Soil Bible takes you on a powerful journey back to the ancient wisdom that created the world's most fertile soils. Discover the secrets of Amazonian terra preta, also called black gold, born from biochar, fish bones, compost, and microbial magic. Master the art of Chinese green tea composting and Japanese bokashi to transform kitchen scraps and yard waste into living, breathing super soil. Whether you're a backyard gardener, passionate homesteader, or family determined to build real food security, this book gives you everything you need. Step-by-step instructions, precise natural ingredients lists, and proven techniques to grow your own ultra-fertile dirt instead of buying dead bags from the store. Become a true dirt farmer. Revive the microorganisms that power life. Break free from synthetic slavery and slow chemical suicide, and create abundant, nutrient-dense harvests that feed your family for generations. Your garden, your orchard, your future. It all starts with the soil. Reclaim the earth. Grow your own black gold.